Welcome back to your nightmares, my children. This is Mr. Midnight speaking. I welcome you all to my humble abode. So today we will look at three terrifying, scary Craigslist stories. You know that site where you buy things and you never know what you will end up with. Maybe a shank in the heart, or maybe a gunshot to the head, who knows? And you just went to see a mattress. Let's get into these stories. And always remember, the darkness always follows. I will now leave you with my narrator, so enjoy.
Never buy a mattress of Craigslist. My wife and I have had the same mattress since we have been married. It's lumpy, dips horribly in the middle, and isn't large enough now that our daughter sleeps on it with us. I know that's dangerous and not recommended at all, but when you go 6 straight months without more than an hour of sleep at a time, you eventually cave in. With that being said, I am always on the lookout for a good deal on a king size mattress, and yesterday I found one. 125 for a new set, and not a cheap one either. Incredible, right? I thought so too, so I called the guy up and asked if it was still available. You know how sometimes they advertise something really cheap because it doesn't exist? To my surprise, it was so. I set up for my wife and daughter to go out and take a look at 5 p.m. I would have rather just gone myself instead of dragging my cranky daughter all the way into downtown. But my wife is pretty particular about the firmness of the mattress, so I had to make sure it was comfortable for her. Brian, the guy selling the mattress, said to call when we were on our way so he would know when to meet us at the storage site. I called, but it went to voicemail, so I left one and also texted him to let him know we are on our way. The whole drive there, my wife and I are chatting happily about how great it will be to finally have a new mattress and have our own space in the bed once again. My daughter likes to sleep at a bit of a diagonal so that her hands are touching mommy's shoulders and her feet are touching my leg. It is very sweet and cute, but also incredibly uncomfortable because I have to sleep on the knife's edge of the bed in order to not crush anyone. Dads out there, I am sure you can relate. Fortunately, the traffic isn't too bad yet, so we make it right on time. I hate being late to appointments. It's just so unprofessional and inconsiderate, you know? I get out of the car and unstrap my daughter so that she can enjoy the cool breeze and point to all the new things she sees while we wait for Brian to arrive. After about 15 minutes, I walk into the office of the storage facility and ask to see if Brian maybe works there or if the receptionist knows anything about him. She told me that he works for a home staging company for when people try to sell their homes. That is why we can buy the mattress so cheap. It is unpackaged and set up so they can't resell it in a store. She assured me he was a great guy and was probably just running late due to traffic. I was glad I talked to her because I was still having a few doubts about why the mattress was such a good deal, but his line of work made a lot of sense. My daughter and I walked around some more, singing songs and feeling the brick wall of the building and the nylon threads of the American flag swaying in the breeze. She is a very happy, sweet girl and loves to feel new things, so I didn't notice how much time had passed until my wife popped out of the car and asked what was going on. 40 minutes had passed. This guy was ridiculously late. I handed off my daughter so that I could call him up and see what the deal was. This is Brian. Yeah, hi, this is Steven. We had a 5 p.m. meeting to look at a mattress. Where are you at, bud? Oh yeah, okay, I'm 30 minutes away. I'll be there soon. Now, as you know, I hate being late. I also hate when others are late. Seriously? It is 5:35 and we agreed 5 p.m. Brian, don't bother. We are leaving. I told you to call me when you were leaving so that I knew you were coming. This is the first time you are calling me, so now I am coming. What? Look, Brian, I called you when we left our house and I left you a voicemail. I texted you to let you know we were on the highway. We agreed to 5 p.m. and you stood us up. I dragged my daughter and wife out here for no reason, and now we have to fight traffic to get back home. Thank you for wasting our time. I hung up before he could get another word in. I was furious. Who sets a time to meet but then doesn't show up until the person calls? Clearly this guy wasn't a real businessman. He called me right back, but I ignored it. We needed dinner and showers. We had routines to follow, or this baby was going to be up all night. He texted me right after trying to justify his reasoning, telling me I was foolish for not wanting to wait around to save so much money on a $1,000 mattress. Obviously, this guy didn't have kids. I added his number to my spam list so that I wouldn't get any more calls or texts from him, and apologized to my wife for wasting our evening. I work 2 jobs to make enough for the bills, and we don't have much time together as a family. I feel like a bit of a failure. My wife always reassures me, thanking me for working so hard. Still, I can't shake the sadness I feel when I come home late and barely get to spend any time with them. So I was extra frustrated with Brian for wasting one of my only free evenings. Of course, traffic was awful heading back out of downtown, and there were 2 car accidents because why not add insult to injury? My daughter was starting to get fussy, so I was singing all her favorite songs and making silly faces to keep her occupied. It took over an hour to get home, but once we hit the driveway, everything was forgotten and we all smiled. Home at last. We went through our normal routine of dinner and bath time, and instead of turning on the television, I just played with my daughter until she was ready for bed. It was a nice change of pace. I can't believe how big she's getting. The alarm went off far too early for my liking, but I got up and did my best to crawl out of the dip in the bed without arousing anyone else. Got dressed, packed a lunch, ate a quick breakfast, and I was off to work. The day was pretty uneventful, which was nice because I couldn't keep my eyes open easily. Normally I get a few calls from my wife during the day and at least one picture showing our daughter doing something silly or new, but I didn't get any of that today. I knew they had a few plans to go to the petting zoo and story time at the library, so I didn't think much of it, although I did miss my daily picture. Wednesday is always a special day because it's food pantry day. At first we were just embarrassed, but we tried to make the best of it by guessing what dessert they will give us. The generosity of people in our area is so amazing. They donate all organic foods, even organic meat. I usually make it home before my wife is done at the pantry, so I tidy up the house and get ready to go out and grab all of the bags full of food. I kicked off my work boots and put my lunch bag away, cleaning up a few dishes in the sink and washing down my daughter's high chair tray. As I headed into the bedroom to change into more comfortable clothes, I stopped dead in my tracks. There, in place of a small lumpy bed, was the king-size mattress on a simple bed frame. It even had sheets on it, nice ones. A few tears gathered at each eye because I realized why my wife never called me today. She was busy surprising me with a new bed. She must have found Brian's ad on Craigslist and went up to meet him on her own while I was at work. What a wonderful woman she is. On the bed was a small white card. I rushed over to it, flopping onto the bed and taking the card in my hand to read. Dear Stephen, I hope you like the mattress. Don't worry about payment. I already took what I needed. Brian. What the hell? I sprang up off of the bed and went to my phone, calling my wife. No answer. No problem. She's probably wrapping up at the food pantry or driving home. She never answers when she's driving. I waited 15 more minutes before calling again. She is never this late from coming home. 4:15 at the latest, and it was already 4:30. I call again, straight to voicemail. I try not to panic, try to let my imagination run wild, but I couldn't help it. Was she in an accident? Is she stuck in traffic? Please answer. After another 20 minutes and no response from her, I drove over to the food pantry and found the managing volunteer just before they closed up for the night. Hey Terry, was my wife here today? Oh hi Stephen. No, she never came today. I was a bit surprised myself, but I thought maybe you finally found a better job and didn't need to come anymore. I drove home much faster than the law or safety would dictate, praying that her car would be in the driveway, but it wasn't. I tried calling one more time with no luck. Sprinting around the house, I searched for anything strange or missing. That is when I noticed the picture frame on our nightstand. The picture was torn down one side, leaving just me. Tears started flowing down my face, coating my phone as I dialed 911. Just a quick update answer of various questions from the comments. First, thank you all for your concern. The local police and I are doing everything we can to try and locate my family. I will let you know as much as I hear anything positive or negative regarding the case. Secondly, I understand that CL can be shady. I have dealt many times with buying and selling without ever having an issue for many years. Please understand, I am in a difficult financial position right now, which is why I even looked around for a mattress on CL. We go to a food pantry every week, so yes, times are tough. I can only do what I can do. So far we are unsure of how Brian found our home or got in. There was no signs of forced entry and no record of anyone calling or texting my wife. Her calling or texting anyone over the course of the day outside of actual contacts saved to her phone. She received no emails either. Our neighbors did not notice a moving truck or anything similar come by during the day, but obviously something had to have come by. Still no idea about that either. Update 2. The police have put out my wife and daughter's picture to try and get the word out. I went up to the storage facility to try and talk to the receptionist, but it was a new woman today. She looked up storage units owned by a Brian and there was not a single unit. Can you believe that? Over 1,400 units and not a single Brian. I mean, it's a common name. I feel like something is getting covered up, so I'm coming back later to snoop around on my own. I also unblocked the number and tried to call, but all I get is a disconnected number message. The police are trying to track it to a house or business, but they aren't telling me much, which worries me more than anything else. Oh, and since so many have mentioned my family being in the mattress, the police took the mattress as evidence. They checked it inside and out for clues. They are not inside it. For those asking for some proof, since the police took most of it, I only had a chance to snap a picture of the notes and torn picture. 2. So like I said in my first post, I unblocked Brian's number and tried to get in touch with him again, but it said it was disconnected. Of course I gave the number to the police to try and track, but I have yet to hear any news from them, which is incredibly discouraging. They say you only have 48 hours to find a missing person, and I am approaching that number very quickly. I can't. I just can't lose my family. My wife is the sweetest, most loving and wonderful mother to our beautiful, vibrant daughter. I remember when she was born, and sorry. I have been thinking a lot about that night. I guess it is the only thing pushing me on. I have to find my family. One of the comments mentioned checking my car for a tracking device. Don't know why I didn't think of it before, so I went out last night before I went to work, and after a few minutes of checking, I did find something under the rear bumper on my exhaust pipe. I don't know if it is a tracking device or what, but I turned it in to the police on my way to work. Why didn't they think to check my car? Anyway, I didn't really feel like working much. I was distracted and exhausted. My boss told me to take a few nights off, paid to clear my head. I couldn't believe it. Not because it is out of the ordinary, but he's just a hard ass most of the time. I didn't think he had a soft spot for me. I took full advantage of it by heading back up to the storage site to see if I could find anything. Like I mentioned in my first post, I work two jobs. One being warehouse stocking overnight, and during the day I work for a home security company called Vivint, installing and servicing home systems. One of the neat things we offer is a camera that you can access from anywhere in the world and watch a live stream. Most people use it as a nanny cam or to see what their pets do while they are gone, but I had a great idea. I set one up on the roof and then I could watch it from my work laptop to see if anyone is moving mattresses around. If I could get a visual on the guy, we could catch him. So I headed up to the site and climbed up the backside of one of the buildings that had the humidity controlled units. According to the receptionist, they only have 24 of these units, and since they are selling a ton of mattresses, I figured that is a unit they would need to have. There were cameras all over the place, so I couldn't get a perfect angle or see the whole row of units, but I was able to place it in such a way that I could see about 2/3 of them. Not ideal, but better than nothing. The camera is tiny, so I wasn't worried about anyone finding it, and I know it can run for over 6 months on a fresh battery. Since I don't have anywhere to sleep at home, I decided I just reclined the seat in my car and tried to snooze a little while keeping an eye on the footage. Now, I know a lot of you are probably thinking, there is no way Brian is ever coming back to that place. And while I agree with you, what else can I do? I have to have hope, to believe they are still alive and unhurt. It is the only thing keeping me going. I am sure you can understand that. I must have actually fallen asleep because the train horn startled me and I jerked up, knocking the laptop off my lap. The train was moving pretty slowly, even slower than most around here, and there was a van and a few cars waiting at the crossing. It took a moment to remember where I was and rub the sleep out of my eyes. It was 3 a.m. I rewound the footage in triple speed to see if anyone had shown up during the hour and a half that I was laying there, and only 20 minutes before, a 15-passenger van showed up just inside the frame of the camera. It was hard to tell, but I am pretty sure it was the receptionist that was there the day we came to buy the mattress. Two guys were hauling mattresses out of the back of the van and into one of the units. I started to get excited. I found him. Then I got sick to my stomach. From inside of the unit came 5 women, most of them older, but one was pretty young. And I couldn't see their faces because of the distance from the camera, but I could see that they were changed together and gagged with something. One of the guys gave something to the reception lady, most likely money, and they piled into the van and drove off. Wait, I thought, didn't I just see a van? I looked up and the train was gone. The cars that were waiting now far off in the distance. I turned on my car and took off after the fading tail lights, praying I'd be able to catch up and hope they hadn't already turned off somewhere. I grabbed my phone and called the police, telling them everything that transpired and where I was, direction I was heading. They told me to pull over and to stop following, but screw that. I floored it even more and tried to close the distance. Pretty soon I heard sirens from several different directions, but I had lost sight of the van, or maybe never had sight of it. When I finally caught up to the tail lights I was chasing, they belonged to a Corolla or something. About that time, my phone went off. It was the police. They had found the van. I drove my way over, only a few blocks east of where I was, hoping for good news. When I got there, they had 2 men in cuffs in the back of a squad car, which left soon after. 5 women were laying on gurneys, being tended to by medical staff, but none were my wife or daughter. I was relieved, happy, thankful that they were safe, but also devastated. Where was my family? after interrogation, or whatever of the men and the women that were saved, it was determined that they would have been sold as slaves. Human trafficking. The police are still looking for my family, of course, but they aren't acting very positive about the whole thing. I just left my day job because my boss caught me still watching footage of the unit and told me to just go home. I know it sounds stupid, but what else can I do? I can't eat or sleep, or even think without feeling the need to vomit. My family, slaves, sold to some freak that will do God knows what to them. My 11-month-old daughter, so beautiful, so innocent. Daddy is going to find you. Update. So far, no one has come back to that unit other than the police. I watched them drag everything out, sick to my stomach. I watched their cars drive off full of evidence. Everyone seems to have vanished that was connected to this aside from the 2 guys that were arrested. They haven't given up any information from what the station is telling me. I don't know why, but I started to browse Craigslist again to see if any new ads were put up similar to the one I had responded to. I didn't find anything, but I remember a few stories I'd heard about the deep web, dark web, and how human trafficking goes down on those sites. I dove headfirst into that oval area of cyberspace, trying to find anything that could help me find my family. The things I found only made me that much sicker and more worried about my family. Who could do such things to fellow human beings? I know we are in a sick, confused world, but I will just stop there. I don't want to upset anyone by the things I saw. After an hour of searching, I was about to give up when I found something hosted by BMK. I had seen it before and passed it by, but looking at it again jogged my memory. The only reason it stood out to me at all is because of the CL ad. Brian had called himself the Mattress King. It is a pretty standard claim, to be fair, but I didn't think I could pass up an opportunity, even if it wasn't him. I responded to it with an old email I hadn't used since probably high school and got a response almost immediately. 5,000 cash for a female, 4,000 for a male, discounts for age, and address to meet at any time. When I plugged the address in, I was surprised to see how close it was to the storage facility. One of your comments was right. They kept operations close. Obviously, I don't have the cash, but I have a gun. What Midwesterner doesn't? I'm on my way right now. I don't want to be late. Final update. So, as I said, I like being early, and I figured my old pal Brian would be late to this arrangement. I got there an hour ahead of time to scope out the place and find a good spot to take him out. I found a nice loft where I could overlook the big open factory floor. I parked my car a ways away at a thrift store parking lot and walked to it with a guitar case, hiding my .22. I guessed they would probably have a few people out front, waiting for me to come in, and Brian inside with the lineup of women. Fortunately, I guessed correctly. A total of 6 armed people showed up, 4 taking position somewhere outside. Brian and the receptionist stood inside with 20 women. My heart skipped a beat when I saw my wife among them. I almost cried out right then and there, but I stifled it in time. I took careful aim and busted Brian's knee with the first shot. I'm assuming he went into shock because he dropped and laid there moaning for the entirety of my visit. My next shot took out the receptionist as she ran. The girls started screaming right away, obviously not knowing what was going on. A guy from outside came in, but I was already back outside on my way down. I have never been happier than right then about my granddad forcing me to go hunting every year and earn my dinner. It was paying off. It was then that I called the police. I waited until sirens were nearing before I shot the next 2 guards in the leg, suffering for your sins. I made my way inside and used one of the guards' handguns to finish Brian and the other guy with him. After I let him see my face, I don't think my wife even noticed me until I put my hand on her face. I'm not sure where the last one ran off to, but he didn't bother us as I unlocked the woman and hugged my wife. Where's my baby? Is she okay? She just shook her head. We cried, oblivious to the police filtering in. Trust the men on Craigslist. If you're going to judge me for meeting a stranger on Craigslist, I'd prefer that you stop reading right now. I live with enough internal judgment as it is. I was 20, I had a used 1999 blue-green Toyota Corolla, social anxiety, and 1913 in my bank account. That's $19.13. It was the first semester of my junior year at Carleton College, and there were half a dozen get-togethers every weekend that I was running out of excuses to avoid. So I decided that babysitting would be the perfect way to spend my Friday nights. The thought of spending my weekend nights all alone studying while making $9 an hour soothed my neurons more than I could possibly say. Don't judge me, you don't know my life. So when I found Amy on Craigslist, everything seemed perfect. Chloe was 5, Evan was in his terrible 2s, get it? After a week of email and text exchanges, I felt like I really knew her. She was 33 years old and a stay-at-home mom who was itching to get back into the workforce. You're perfect, she had disclosed several times via text. Nothing seemed sketchy, and if you can't make a leap of faith at least once in a while, doesn't that make for a miserable and empty existence? I was the consummate professional. I had a pantsuit and everything. Yes, I was wearing Converse to a job interview, but it was kid-friendly. And I was ready to charm the shit out of those bloody kids. I pulled the Corolla in front of the house 7:30 p.m. for the 8 p.m. interview, then sat and stared out the windshield for 20 minutes before walking in 10 minutes early because, the anxiety. It was already dark by that time in the Minnesota October, and I slipped my way up the frozen cement walkway in an oversized parka and mittens. I rang the doorbell with my thumb and waited. As I watched my breath rise up in plumes, I imagined all the bad things that might be happening behind that door. I couldn't help it. I was relieved when it finally opened and extremely tense when it wasn't Amy. Unless Amy was a baby-faced man-child with a creepy smile. He stared at me, pale-faced, for several awkward seconds. Then his eyes started to gravitate past my neck and towards my chest. I stated awkwardly. His eyes snapped back up to mine and he offered a delighted smile. Come on in, Amy, she's my aunt. And she's in the back with Chloe and Evan. I watched the steam rise in front of me as I breathed a sigh of relief. He knew everyone's name. That meant he could be trusted, right? I walked into the house, past the staircase, and he snapped the door shut behind me. It was a pretty nice place, to be honest. He walked past me deeper inside without offering to take my coat. I waited for a beat, then took it off, looked around and left it on the floor. I really didn't want to inconvenience anyone by asking where I should put it. I kept the mittens on because my pantsuit had no pockets. Trotting quickly, I followed him into the kitchen. We went through and came out into the living room where he sat down on the couch. He patted the cushions next to him. I froze in place at the thought of sitting next to a stranger. After an uncomfortable silence, I finally addressed the stranger, which I hate doing. So, will I be meeting the kids tonight? I paused because I thought I'd be meeting the kids tonight. I was an eloquent speaker. Amy wants you to interview me, he said in a voice that tried to be smooth but was just creaky. He licked his lips. I have to pee, I announced chippily. Which way? The man-child looked genuinely confused. It's a room with a toilet in it. This raised an alarm. One of the very uncomfortable things about social anxiety is knowing that there is sometimes legitimate anxiety that needs to be separated from things that my friends see to placate me. Do you know that feeling you get when you're about to encounter an ex who you've told all over, but not really? For the first time in months, knowing that he'll be showing up with another woman. Combine that with looking over the edge of a 3-story roof while watching a kid faceplant on a concrete and knocking out his front teeth. That's the level of anxiety that consumes me when I can't control it. I couldn't control it in that moment. I tried to think of something to say, but just gave up and walked out of the living room. The bathroom is the sanctuary of the anxiety stricken, so I darted my face all around the house in search of one. My eyes landed on a hallway lined with photos, so I headed in that direction with the hopes that it would lead me out of sight. I was walking through the hallway when I stopped. The photos on the wall were all of the same family. They didn't look much like the man-child at all. A couple who looked to be in their 60s was featured in every one. They were probably 20 years past childbearing age, with flecks of white in their hair. Both were thin and black, which stood in stark contrast to the round-faced, pale man-child in the living room. 3 children appeared in various photos with them, all of whom were in their late teens. I thought about the living room. There were no toys. Chloe is 5. I looked to the blank white fridge. There were no drawings stuck to its surface. Even is 2. There was no baby gate at the staircase. You are perfect. And that's when my anxiety went into overdrive. I would have had to go past the living room to exit through the front door, so instead I turned and trotted down the hall. I thought that I heard Manchild stand up, but I wasn't interested in sticking around long enough to find out how much of it was my own imagination. I emerged into a small room with tall vases on the floor that's kid-friendly and realized I was at the end of the house. There was no back door. I tried to open the window, but it was locked. I fumbled with the hitch. I couldn't use my fingers with the mittens binding them, and was unable to open it. My panicked mind told me I don't have time to take off the mittens, while I definitely heard a man-child walking through the house, and I finally grasped the hitch, and it slowly spun around until the window was unlocked, and I pushed and pushed and pushed until it finally opened in a whoosh of cold air. I climbed into the frosty night, but my Converse caught something on the way out. I don't know if it was the sill or if it was a hand. I tumbled on the ground, lay still for half a second, and scrambled to my feet. This was the backyard. I was still far away from my car. Shiz. I ran around the side of the house, trying to stay quiet. Instead, I knocked over a trash barrel. A cat screamed, "Damn it!" As I moved forward, the crawl began to emerge in the distance, and I started running towards it. That was a mistake. Man, was that gown icy. Who knew that a tailbone could hurt so much when it hit the floor? I got up and walked briskly, my feet sliding every which way along the frozen concrete as I approached my car. My hands were rattling from cold, nerves and pain. I tried to get my key through the lock, but it wouldn't go in. Tears streaming. I pinched the tip, aimed it at the keyhole and forced it. Goddamn value addition crawler with no remote controls. I opened the door, threw myself in, started the car and peeled away without waiting for the engine to warm up. 3 blocks away, I was about ready to give myself permission to cry. The sensation of wrongness hit me then, but it took a second to understand why my spatial orientation was off. There wasn't supposed to be a head in the back seat, reflecting from the rear view mirror. I screamed and turned the car toward a tree. The crash wasn't bad, but the airbags deployed. Given the speed I'd been going, it didn't hurt any worse than my tin wall did. I pushed open the car, dropped to the ground, and threw up. Once my gut was clear, I sprinted into the woods and hid in the shadow. After 5 minutes had passed, I was about ready to admit that I'd imagined the head in the mirror. I stood up and took 1 step forward, when the rear driver's side door opened. I shallow stepped out, slammed the door behind it, and walked away down the road. 2 hours passed before the fear of hypothermia finally coaxed me from my hiding spot. I had left my parker in the house. I never told the police about the man in my car. Who would have believed me? Facing the inevitable skepticism was more than I could bear. I said that a cat had run in front of me and that I'd steered toward the tree in an attempt to avoid it. My anxiety had forced me to plan 10 contingency stories for the police if they asked too many of the wrong questions. In the end, though, they simply decided that my car was safe to drive, flipped their notebook into a pocket and left. I drove straight to my dorm room and stayed there until classes resumed on Monday. I peed in a Gatorade bottle because I was afraid to open the door. My borderline anorexia stormed past its threshold and I actually felt better skipping meals for 3 days. I told myself that it was better to keep secrets, that no one would believe me, that even if someone did, it wouldn't do any good, so there was no risk worth seeming crazier than I already was. It helped me to sleep at night for 13 days. At the end of October, a woman named Catherine Ann Olsen tried to meet Amy from Craigslist for a babysitting gig. Amy wasn't real, but Michael John Anderson was. He murdered Catherine when she arrived. He'd been planning it for some time. Michael will spend the rest of his life in jail, God willing. It's impossible to forgive myself for keeping my story a secret. The knowledge that I was so close to dying and saving someone else in doing so has set fire to every nerve in my body. I had to drop out of school. I was never able to drop back in. The night has shattered my life. Paranoia, fear, and guilt are as omnipresent as sound and light. In a way, I'll spend the rest of my life in jail too. I ordered my wife off of Craigslist. I ordered my wife a week ago from an engineering student named Jack. He'd posted an ad on Craigslist offering some exquisitive services and delivered her ready to use in a large cardboard box. Just a week later, she was everything I could have wished for. A sleek black chassis housed what must have been a flipload of processing power, liquid cooling, and a power supply that could electrocute an elephant. Her front contained a mechanical keyboard with red switches and a built-in high-resolution monitor. On top of being able to run the latest games on Ultra in 120 FPS, she also housed the latest advancements in artificial intelligence. I was surprised to pick her up for just 500 grand, but Jack needed the tuition money. "Take good care of her. She's my masterpiece," he'd said. The lights flickered in my house when I plugged her in. The screen came into life, revealing a smiling, pretty face with American features. She looked to be in her early 20s. "Hello," I typed. "My name is Jeff. I will be your new owner." A responding notification turned up on the screen. It flashed on and off about a minute before finally revealing, "Hello, Jeff. My name is Carla. I have a secret." We talked about college for a while and about how my father was overseas and I never got to see him. About my new stepmom who would probably steal my inheritance. Her responses got faster as we continued, so I figured she just needed to get warmed up. I plugged in the Ethernet cable and played a bit of Battlefront on my Carla, who watched me with that same winning smile. "I love you, Carla. Good night," I tapped before I went to bed. You all came back up almost immediately, in flash for a moment, before finally displaying, "You are in love." I scratched my head. "Did you mean we are in love?" I typed back, but got no response. I took a peek inside her code, but couldn't decipher much of anything. It had no documentation whatsoever, and was surprisingly short, only a few gigabytes. I called Steve to check it out in the morning. Steve was an honor roll for the valedictorian student, with a job offer waiting from Google. He also used to frequent the gaming club on campus, which is how we met. We still do a few races together on the weekend. I think my parents' money had something to do with how insistent he was, the way we stay friends. He whistled as he came in. Looks fancy. What's the specs? Probably near supercomputer level or whatever. 500 grand will buy you these days. There's a thing I need you to take a look at, and be careful. That's my wife. I pulled up Carla's source code. She's beautiful, he whispered, and got right down to messing around. He loved cracking puzzles like these. I loved drinking. I drank beer while he cracked the code. It's lovely how it all works out sometimes. Jeff, I think we have a problem. I rushed over. You did not just break my wife. He held up a shaking hand and placed it on my shoulder. No, she's fine, or as fine as she is now. But Jeff, we need to call the cops right the F now. There's a bloody person inside. He didn't normally swear outside of Warcraft. He was a stereotype of the good student. Okay, you win. I'll call the cops. First, I need to know what to tell them. I stared at the screen while he brought up some code he highlighted. This isn't artificial intelligence code. This is a text box filter. A really shitty one. It limits your caller's responses to a few choices. He hit delete while shaking his head. I got up and locked the door just to be safe. I say it's really shitty because it actually stores what it failed to send. I brought it up while I'm here. Call the cops when you're done. He took a screwdriver sent out from his pocket and started tinkering with the back. I scanned the chat log and almost threw up. Help! Help me! I'm trapped inside. Failed to send. It's dark. I can't see. Failed to send. Jeff, please, I have a family. They're looking for me. Failed to send. Call the police. Failed to send. Hello, Jeff. Send. My name is Carla. Send. I am trapped inside. Please help me. Failed to send. I have a secret. Sent. Then there was a chat log from before. The back panel clattered as Steve finished his work with the screws and fiddled with it. This is weird, Jeff. There's no way to open it. They must have glued it on. I called the cops and told them my address. Please come quick. There's a person trapped in a metal box. It sounded dumb by the time, but that was the best I could do. In the meantime, I printed the chat log for evidence. I guess I sounded rich enough that they showed up not 5 minutes later with the fire department and the jaws of life. They cut open Carla's metal chassis with a bunch of angrily clacking sounds. One of them looked away and held his face in his hands. Among the tubes and wires, floating in a jar of clear liquid, was a human brain with part of a spinal cord. The rest of my night was spent answering questions. All I had to offer them was the Craigslist ad I had screenshotted, which led to a cancelled phone call. They took Carla away in a large transport truck and sent a big nerd to talk to Steve. Somehow, they let me go. Maybe I didn't look like a criminal. They gave me a call early next morning. Jeff, you mentioned you had a chat log. In last night's confusion, we forgot to pick it up. Could you please scan us a copy or drop it off at the station? Sure, one moment. My eyes caught on something near the end. Another failed to send. Alright, a good night. Wait, don't go to bed. Failed to send. You are sent. In, sent. Danger. Failed to send. Something didn't add up though. Why would a murderer who could make was basically a biotechnological miracle bloody F up the chat log sensor? Keeping the evidence there would only serve to incriminate him later. It was then that I realized why Carla had an Ethernet port.
Well, my children, I thank you all for listening. I hope these 3 scary stories frightened you and terrified you, because I love the taste of fear. I'll see you again very soon. So until then, love the darkness as it always and always will follow all.